Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the IRMS Roundtable. And as we start, we only have an hour and 30 minutes. I hope everybody would check that they have access to the chats and the questions. Why don't we start this roundtable in a very British manner, as they say? Why doesn't everybody tell us where they are and what the weather is like where they are? I am Maria Lim. I am the IRMS Scotland chair. And I am based in Aberdeen, Scotland, where we have glorious sunshine. A lot of people thought I was lying, but no, we have sunshine in Aberdeen. So,
and hi, I'm Ren, and I'm Reynold Leming, and I'm the chair of the IRMS. So hello, in Bath, and we have miserly rain and grey clouds, and I even think I probably need to wear a coat if I go out later. So hello everyone, look at all this coming in. Lots of people from everywhere. And there's Andrew. Hello Andrew in Melbourne, Australia. New York City, Kevin.
Scottish. My Scotland guys are there.
Yeah. And Norway. Cold in Norway.
In Norway, yes.
10:30 at night.
It's great outside Glasgow, sunny Dublin. Okay, so let me start this off really quickly. This IRMS roundtable, basically, it has a very, very simple aim and goal. As records managers, as information management practitioners, we were given a product which we're told we would be able to use for records management. And our expectation is just to be able to use it for records management from start to end. That is our simple, out-of-the-box requirement. Because as we go through our roles as records and information managers, we are we operate under the guidance of our National Archives and Regulators. The National Archives and Regulators who have provided us with a guideline, a blanket guideline to follow, which they audit us and regulate us on, which should be technology agnostic. So the National Archives and Regulators cannot provide us with guidelines that fit Microsoft and fits another solution and another solution. It defeats the purpose of it. So we need to follow a very specific guideline by the National Archives. However, there is a challenge. And of course, we are here and really would like to thank Microsoft who are, I'm starting to see that they are on starting to log in online already. And we are having this roundtable with Microsoft. Let us not forget that Microsoft as an organization is not responsible for the complexities of our organizations. So we're just going here for the simple records management. Microsoft, on the other hand, is not responsible for the complexities of organizations where we need to do records management, nor the broken processes that are implemented sometimes there. Let us not also forget that Microsoft has provided us with a financially viable product, packaged in a way where we have been provided with a package of products which we could creatively enable so that we could address all these organizational complexities and broken processes that we have. They've also provided a platform which we could extend with the coding thing. They've also provided us with a platform which can be enhanced through applications that they can provide for free and through third-party software that can be purchased outside. So there is an interest for us to work together because we're all in this together. There's still a good thing with the platform. There's things that we need to work on from a regulatory perspective and understand. And as records managers, we need to fulfill our basic records management role as well. And with that, welcome to the roundtable, and I hand you over to Ren, our IRMS chair.
Mute.
Yes.
I don't know if anyone could hear me earlier when I said I was in Bath and it was grey and rainy, in case you didn't. Thank you, Maria. And thank you, Maria, also, of course, for all your hard work in getting this together. I'm Reynold Leming, Chair of the Information and Records Management Society. Obviously, welcome to many, many members of the Society who've joined us today. For those that don't know, we are a professional membership organisation for people working in areas like information governance, records management, digital preservation, covering predominantly the UK and Ireland, but we do actually have members from all over the world. And I'm going to stop in just a second, but say I hope thank you also to everyone from all the archive institutions. Thank you to everyone from Microsoft for participating. And obviously the main gist of today is to present and discuss the wish list to help optimize the Microsoft 365 experience for records management. I'm going to leap off stage in a bit to let others on. I'm going to come back at the end, but I'll be engaged in the chat throughout. Maria, anything else from me, or shall I say adios for now?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you for your support. It's been fabulous for all of us. Now let me share my screen to look at what we're doing right now. So I mentioned, so after the welcome, I'll give you let's go into the introductions, and I will put it in this order that we have on screen right now. So we'd like to introduce you to the people in our roundtable. Let's start with our SMEs, and we are so honored to have Joanne Klein of NexNovus and a Microsoft MVP. Joanne?
Hi, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. It's a pleasure for me to be here today. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you. I hail from Western Canada. I'm an independent consultant, and I work a lot with customers, primarily in Canada, in the financial services area, legal risk, a few companies in the States I also work with. So I spend a good part of my time working with information management and records management teams, I guess making the transition that you spoke about in your introduction. How can we navigate beholden to, and how can we and can we make that work with the Microsoft 365 tooling? I work strictly and entirely and solely with the Microsoft 365 feature set. I do not go outside of that. So that is my zone of expertise. So thank you. I'm really interested to see and hear the conversation today.
Thank you, Joan. And we're honored to have you here as well. And of course, next on our lineup is a guy who doesn't need a lot of introduction in the information management world. So we have John Mancini, who's been with AIIM forever. I lived in Hong Kong and you were already at AIIM, John. So this is John now, Content Results, and I am International Evangelist. John?
You must have been just a small child at the time then. Yes, I thank you, Maria, for that introduction. I John Mancini, and I spent about 22, 23 years working as the president of AIM, and so was there at the birth of SharePoint and watched the impact that had on the document and content management space. I left AIM as an employee a couple of years ago. I continue to do some work with them on a contracting basis. And I run their, oops, we have a bit of an echo here.
We have an echo, yeah.
Let's see, that might have helped it. Yes, so I left the full-time employee a couple of years ago. I continue to do some work for them, and I run their Industry Watch research program. And actually, we have coming up, I'll post the link in here sometime during the course of the session, We have coming up a survey, as timing is everything, I guess, in life, that I'm launching tomorrow on M365. So would love to get the perspectives and opinions of all the folks on this call. And so I'll post that link, and we'll share the results after the fact. And it'll only take about 8 minutes to take it. So it would be very, very helpful if you all could take it. I'm currently, I noticed my friend Vivek down on the list later on in just a second. I'm doing some work with Infotechtion right now in my consulting role, and I'm really enjoying that. And perhaps it's worth just saying why I did that and what I find sort of interesting. And it both reflects the competency of Infotechtion, but it also reflects the change in the space that you all are here to talk about, which is that, you know, people have been talking about records management and governance, first in SharePoint and then more broadly on the Office 365 platform for a long time. And I guess I would categorize the market perspective on that over time has been that it has been, people still thought there were additional tools that were needed to fully optimize the platform. And what I find really fascinating right now is that as the platform has matured, there are so many inherent records and governance capabilities that exist in the platform now that didn't exist 10 years ago. And the pace of change that is going on the platform is so rapid that we're approaching a very interesting inflection point where I think organizations have to think through, okay, how am I going to optimize the out-of-the-box capabilities in order to both save money and also keep up with innovation? And that really becomes a business strategy and business priority kind of decision that they have to make. In some ways, you know, I've spent a long time in my career talking about people, process, and technology. The technology, as this gets mature on the M365 environment, is becoming something that is almost in the background a little bit, but optimizing those technologies becomes something else, which really focuses on the strategy issues, I think, Maria, that you all wanted to talk about today. So thank you all so much for the invitation. I'm very flattered to be here, and I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, John, for joining us. And of course, next on our line is somebody very familiar with the community. We thought that he needs to continue to help us with you know, trying to uncover all these challenges we have. So also, let us congratulate him, newly married. Congratulations, Graham. So Graham Snow, welcome to the round table.
Very much. I hope you can hear me now. You had a bit of an echo earlier. Is that okay?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Perfect. So yeah, very quick introduction from me. It's always really difficult to explain what my job is because I have several jobs. Seeing the congratulations coming in. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate that. So I work full-time in the higher education sector, and I've done a number of jobs over the years, mostly in the technical space. But I've also worked as a records manager. So I've been a recipient of some of these challenges that we're trying to figure out how we move forward with. But actually, most of my career, I've been a consultant in what we would think of as being traditional electronic and document and records management systems. So, you know, your open texts and your documentums and your trims, and then moved into the Office 365 space more recently. So I've come from that kind of background, come from being someone who uses it and trying to figure out how to actually solve some of the challenges myself. But over the last few years, I've now moved into an environment where I'm helping other people to do it. So primarily, I suppose the thing that's relevant to me being here is my work through leadership through data. So as a training and consultancy company, I've helped to develop a course around Office 365 records management. And one of the conversations I've been really having with people over the last few years are, what do we actually need to do to achieve practical records management? So let's sort of take a step back, rethink what it is we're actually trying to achieve here. How can we do it with the technology? How can we do it without the stuff we get out of the box? Or do we need to make that difficult decision to go out and procure a third-party solution? So a lot of my conversations have been helping people to work through and understand what the actual challenges are. Are there any practical workarounds, or can we build or buy something to help us move forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. And of course, let us not forget our our guys who started all of these ones. We've got Robert Bhatt from Intelogy. Rob, please give us a hello.
Hi, everyone. You can probably see I've still kept the COVID beard. So a bit unlike Jack Black, who some of you might have seen has actually cut all of his lockdown growth off. I'm still here with the beard. But anyway, for people, I'm sure most people are bored with seeing me, but for people who are less familiar, I'm a Microsoft 365 solution architect. I've done nothing but Microsoft 365 and SharePoint before that for, gosh, far more than a decade now. And effectively over the last 5-6 years, I've been specializing and focusing upon information compliance and information governance within Microsoft 365, having built some of the largest records management systems in the UK, and certainly overseen some of the largest for various different sort of central government departments, universities, and even private sector companies. I'm also happened to be the, I guess it's old news now. Back in May, I stood up to the RMS as their new digital director. So I'm sort of wearing multiple hats here today. Anyway, I'll keep it short and sweet and let someone else take the stage.
Yes. So let us welcome, of course, Andrew Warland. Do I need to introduce him yet? But he's another guy who's helped us in our threads and the community, quite well known in the community. Andrew?
Thank you very much, Maria, for the introduction. For those of you who don't know me, and I doubt whether many people don't know me, but those who don't, I'm based now in Melbourne, in Australia, down the south. I used to live in Sydney, so if you wondered if I'm the same person, yes, I am. Now I live in cold Melbourne instead of sunny, warm Sydney. I'm often feel like I'm the oldest person in the room when I say that I've had just on 40 years of experience working with information and records management and management systems across multiple government and private sector organizations in Australia and New Zealand and other places. I've implemented a range and managed a range of systems since the mid-90s, including lovely old Lotus Notes, Alfresco, Documentum, Trim, now Content Manager, RecFind, and for the last 10 years, I've been working primarily in SharePoint and SharePoint Online. Until recently, for about 8 years, until recently, I was the global administrator for a 9,000 employee company based in Sydney, Australia. And I was there for about 7 years as the information architect. Now I work a bit like Joanne as an independent consultant working from home, which for me is no change, with a range of organizations to help them manage digital records using Microsoft 365 and SharePoint Online. There's a great deal of interest in this subject in Australia. And for those of you who don't know it, I've been blogging about this subject for about 10 years. And so you may have come across my blog if you've done a search, and I'm a regular contributor to a number of different forums. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to participating in today's session.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And of course, let's not forget Vivek Bhatt of Infotechtion, who has helped me a lot, Vivek. Without Vivek, helped me a lot with the Microsoft invite as well. And a lot more. So yes, Vivek, I'll give you the floor now.
Hi, Maria. Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. And I've really enjoyed the past few sessions as well in this community. And so feel very, very welcomed. I work as part of Infotechtion. And again, my experience is all Microsoft 365. And again, for the past decade, been very much focusing with Microsoft and also customers, helping the adoption of Microsoft information governance and protection capabilities. And so this session is really exciting and interesting for me to kind of join the community and talk about common challenges and opportunities, and also with having Microsoft and Microsoft experts in the team kind of brings it all together for me. So really excited and looking forward to this session.
Yes. Thank you so much, Vivek. Now let's move to the next one. Our next set of speakers are the National Archives and Regulators. These are the people who are doing their best to understand the challenges we're having with all the guidelines and regulations they have. So to start with, we have let us welcome to the fold something that we were not expecting so much. The U.S. National Archives and Records Administration, NARA, an organization we work with a lot in the UK. Let's welcome Beth Cron to us. Please welcome Beth.
Hi there. Good morning. Good afternoon. So yes, my name is Beth Cron, and I am on the Policy and Program Support team within the Office of the Chief Records Officer at the National Archives and Records Administration. And so our office is on the Records Administration side of the National Archives. So we bring a policy perspective, and we work with agencies on managing their records in accordance with the Federal Records Act, which applies to the executive branch of the US government. And so we have over 240 some agencies, commissions, boards, and components that we work with. And we believe nearly all of them are using some version of Microsoft 365, whether on-premise or hosted. And so that said, NARA's guidance and regulations are necessarily generic, and it can be difficult to account for all the variability in the systems that agencies use. And so I just want to mention that we've been working over the last several years on a project called the Federal Electronic Records Modernization Initiative. This is in accordance with memos from the administration and from NARA that we're trying to transition to a fully electronic government. And as part of this, we've done universal electronic records management requirements. And these are high-level requirements that are compiled from statutes, regulations, standards, policy, and guidance. And then they can be used to evaluate whether systems meet NARA's records management requirements. So I'm going to share those with all of you.
Yes, that would be
okay.
Really nice. Yes, and of course, let us also welcome Kevin Divorcee. Sorry,
Divorcee.
Can you hear me?
Electronic Records Policy Analyst of NARA. Kevin, here you go.
Hi, my name is Kevin Divorcee, and I'm on in the same division as Beth, but I'm on the Electronic Records Policy and Standards team. And we're the group that's responsible for developing policy, guidance, and regulations for federal agencies to support them in their electronic records mission. We have a special focus on the policies and guidance that govern the transfer of permanent electronic records to the National Archives. Currently, we have guidance around what file formats we will accept, and then also the minimum complement of metadata that must accompany these records. So we're always interested in the platforms that are being used, and as Beth said, we try and put out generic guidance because we can't presuppose what applications are being used, but it's a delicate balance in that we need to understand the capabilities of these systems and make sure that our guidance can support the eventual transfer to the National Archives.
Yes.
And I do want to add, we've run an Office 365 user group for the last few years with over 300 attendees, and we get together monthly and we have a wiki where we share best practices and lessons learned. And so that's the information we can bring to the group today.
Yep, that is something that I think we can work together as a group to expand that user group, Beth. I think we've lost you a little bit there. So next in line, he has already given his apologies. I am not sure if he's here because of the time difference. Is Mick Crouch, was he managed to, it's 1 o'clock in the morning in New Zealand right now. So I think he struggled to join us at the moment. He did say he wanted to try. But let's move on to the Library and Archives of Canada. Jen, please say hello to us. Jen?
Testing, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. I'm sorry, I don't have a video, but thank you so much for inviting us to join from Canada. So we're very excited. I'm working at the Library and Archives of Canada. So here in the federal government in Canada, we're looking at rolling out Microsoft 365. We have a recent contract with Microsoft for all of the federal government, but of course we do have concerns about compliance to international standards for information and records management. And we want to be able to really move towards a digital government. We've recently established a new policy on service and digital where we've brought together all the policies. We've superseded policies on information management, information technology, cybersecurity, service, client service standards, so that we can really try to bring all of these fields together and have everything, have our solutions designed with users in mind up front, that we're working in the open by default, that we're using open standards and solutions as much as possible, and building in things like accessibility from the start. We really want to manage information and data in a much more proactive way, consistently across government. And we're very, very interested in what is going to be discussed at the roundtable, and we're very happy to be participating today. So thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you too, Jen. And of course, let's welcome back Public Records Office Victoria. That's Peter Francis. Peter?
That's my feet.
Yes. We know what time it is in Australia right now, so we're just thankful that you managed to join us.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed now. I'm going to press on. That's my laptop on the floor there that's picking up. I've got the wrong camera running. So, yeah, so we're very pleased to be involved with this group because we think there's tremendous upside to all the new technologies that become available within the public sector. And we certainly don't long for a past age. There was no golden age probably, but we think it is critical that information management within public sector matters. It's evidence. It's important for people seeking redress when their interactions with the government don't go so well, and it's pretty fundamental to democracy. And so we're very pleased that groups like this get together to just try and make technology work as best as it can for the public good.
Thank you, Peter. And of course, the State Records of South Australia, Tony. Tony, welcome again. Has Tony managed to join us? Yes, here he is.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm Tony Leviston from Adelaide here in South Australia. I'm the Principal Archivist at State Records of South Australia. But my background is very much in digital records and a bit of consulting work. And I guess my focus has been on trying to come up with practical ways of managing records outside of the EDRMS environment. So I'm really keen to be part of this group, looking at how we can manage records in solutions like Office 365. And I've spent a lot of time looking at business system record keeping as well. In South Australia, very similar. Teams has gone crazy since COVID started. We all suddenly got it in March and love it. But yeah, we're not using it internally at the moment for our records management. We're using an EDRMS, and I guess it's how do we shift that picture and feel confident using Office 365. I'm also involved in a lot of international standards work recently. I've just joined ISO working groups on digital records, so I'm very much in the international standards space. Yeah, and that's about it.
Yep. Well, Australia being the birthplace of our ISO 15489 is quite important to us. And of course, let's welcome the National Archives of Norway, Arkiverket, and that's Espen and Martha. Martha.
Hi, my name is Martha. I'm very grateful to be here. I am new to this forum, so very excited to be here and just listen in the forthcoming discussions. We have an initiative in Norway where we are looking to solve this archive of the way of working with archives and information in new ways. And by doing that, we are looking into areas of archive by design that I am a part of and that my colleague Espen are leading. And we have been grateful enough to have discussions with Microsoft in Norway. So they have been very eager to discuss areas of the platform with us. And we are looking forward to more collaboration on that, both with Microsoft and with what we are learning from you guys. So very excited to hear more from the rest of you and your experiences.
Thank you, Martha. Is Espen around already?
Espen has his daughter has a confirmation this weekend. It's
okay.
So he's unfortunately not here, but he sends his regards and wish you all well.
Thanks so much, Martha. And of course, our very own National Archives, Nikki Welch, Matt Tanton, and Valent. Nikki, we have to be grateful for bringing everybody to the National Archives here. Nikki, giving you the floor.
Thanks, Maria. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we could.
So I'm really happy to be here. I was very happy to come to the last roundtable, and I'm really happy to see our colleagues from the other National Archives, lots of familiar faces. I have been speaking to a number of them over the past few months or a year. We're all facing very similar situations. We're responsible for the Public Records Act in our respective countries. We are trying to support everybody who's working very hard across our government to look after their records and to transfer their records to the National Archives, for the public good, as someone just said. And I'm very pleased to be able to talk to Microsoft on, in this forum. We also have talked to Microsoft in London individually as the UK National Archives, but it's really good to have a wider conversation so that we can manage our records like we need to, and we are very happy to be here. I'm also going to just introduce my colleagues Valent and Matt, who work with me in the cross-government engagement team. They are very knowledgeable on this subject. They, along with me, run a Microsoft 365 user group, just like Beth does in the US. And I can see some of our members from various government departments have logged on today, so I'm really grateful to see that. So we are really representing them as our users and our stakeholders who are on the ground doing records management for the UK central government. So yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Valent, do you want to introduce, is Valent here or? Okay, so that's representative of our National Archives, and of course, last but definitely not the least, being the National Records of Scotland.
It is least, honestly, Marie. How you doing? Pete Wadley from the National Records of Scotland. I'm here representing the Public Records of Scotland Act team. I see from the chat window down the side, there's a lot of people here listening in, not from the UK, so very quickly, in like 30 seconds, I'll explain what the Public Records Scotland Act is about. Under law in Scotland, every public authority, and that is outside of government, is government outside of government, including like health boards, local authorities, there's a ferry company that counts as a public authority, have to provide Scottish ministers with a written records management plan. They do that through our office, signed off by the Keeper of Records of Scotland once we've had something of a debate about how they are going to manage their records on a day-to-day basis. This has been running for about 6 years, and the plans are very detailed. We insist on things like, you don't just have a retention schedule, we need to know how you apply that. How do you impose those retention decisions? We need to know when you destroy stuff, how do you make sure it's irretrievably and securely destroyed? what backups do you have? If you work with current contractors, how do you make sure they have robust records management in place for the records they create on your behalf? So it's very detailed plans. We've had about 200 of these in from all over the public sector in Scotland, and our interest in this conversation, this roundtable, is twofold. Firstly, can the public authorities that choose to adopt the Office 365 or M365 platform, can they still do the things they said they could do when these plans were agreed by the keeper? And secondly, what about all this new stuff, I normally call it, but I noticed Joanne called it a feature set, so that's good. We're going to call it a feature set, things like Teams, OneDrive. None of this was being used when these plans were agreed. So how are public authorities making sure they're not being used as little sort of separate records management systems by their staff? So there's lots of questions we have about Office 365. I've got to confess, we don't use it. We use an ETRM, so I'm a total novice, and I'm mainly here just to listen in to other people talking about the technical stuff. But that's why the public records team in Scotland is particularly interested, because it is the way things are moving, and we want to make sure that all the best practice that we've seen and we've worked at over the last 5 or 6 years can be replicated in 365.
Thank you, Pete.
That was longer than 30 seconds. Sorry, Marie.
No worries, Pete. No worries. You are representing the entire organization at the moment. Okay, now let us move on along, and please give a very warm UK British welcome to our Microsoft representative as we can, and we're really honored to have them here. And let me start with honored to have Nishan De Silva. Nishan, so have we got?
Yeah, I don't think Nishan was able to join. I'm Roberto.
Roberto, yeah. We all know you, Rob. So
yeah.
let's introduce Roberto Iglesias first with you. Somebody who's, if you're in the tech community, you would know who Roberto Iglesias is.
Thank you. I don't know. That sounds. There's definitely. I think more people know who Joanne is than me, but that's okay. So I'm Roberto Iglesias. I think the list of who joined from Microsoft is a little different, and we might help you out here a little bit with intros to go a little faster. But so I'm Roberto Iglesias. I'm a principal product manager with Microsoft, and what I'm accountable for is me and my team are basically accountable for building the product that is Microsoft 365 Information Governance and Records Management. I've been at Microsoft for just over a year, so I used to be a consultant just like Joanne and many on the call, helping customers implement information governance as well as many other areas of Microsoft 365 until I think the product group got tired of my feedback and said, you think you can fix it, then come go try. But super excited to be here. I think you all know that Microsoft is really committed towards the records management scenario. We really want to make this product that hopefully next webinar when we join in a year, every single one is going to say that we are using Microsoft 365 for our records management. We don't need anything else. No, but really, we're committed to that, to this scenario. We're committed to the product, and really looking forward to this. I know this is you all here have some of the toughest job because, as you said at the beginning, you have some of the probably more complicated and in some cases, with all respect, antiquated regulations, and that's why there's so many initiatives that to revamp those. And so really super excited to have the conversation, and you'll see us sometimes push back and challenge some of these notions as we try to modernize records management going forward. And there's several of other people on the call from our team on the product group, as well as our marketing team. And so just wanted to kind of thank everybody for the time.
Yes, thanks, Roberto. And let's see, Tina Ying, is Tina around? Is yep, so I'll do a roll call. Hello, Tina. Nice to see you.
Nice to meet everyone. So my name is Tina Ying. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager working very closely with Roberto. We meet on a daily basis. So all the message and marketing material, all the slides you see about records management and information governance are created by me. Yeah, so really happy to be here to hear all the feedback and listen to the discussion. And then hopefully we can help to build better products.
Yes. This is working together. This is not confronted. Somebody said, "Welcome to the Lions." Den. No, we're a very happy community. We're a very happy and welcoming community, guys. Please say that we are, as a community, we are quite welcoming. Of course, Tina, is Amit Bhatia in or?
No, I think Amit wouldn't be able to make it.
Okay.
Let me see.
If not,
team, Matthew Littleton is on from his team. Matthew, if you want to join in.
So who do we have second?
No, we have Matthew Littleton represents
Matthew, yes.
And so Matthew is in for his team.
Yes, Matthew, welcome. We lost you when we were having a tech issue. We hope it wasn't due to the weather or something.
No. It's operator error, I think, on my part. But I'm thrilled to be here. I am actually on a small team of specialists in our worldwide business. So there's a handful of us around the world. My role is to focus exclusively on our compliance solution sets, serve as a point of escalation for all of the field resources, and then work directly with folks like Roberto and Tina around being the voice of the customer. So absolutely don't see this as the lion's den. This is a really critical piece of this for us. I'm based in Washington, D.C., focus a lot on U.S. government accounts and also kind of commercial accounts. But thrilled to be here. Really looking forward to the dialogue. So thanks.
Thank you. Ali, I saw we have Ali Turnbull. We have your UK contingent. I think Ali, say hello to everyone.
Hi everyone, my name's Ali Turnbull. I'm a cloud solution architect and I work in the partner side of the business and I focus on security and compliance. So I work with partners like yourselves, and my job is to help people build practices. So my idea is the role that I do is to help partners in the UK build compliance practices so that they can then take that to market and help you guys all out at the customer end.
Thanks, Ali, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm not sure if I've left anybody. Stephanie Bayer and Bharat Raghunathan, have they joined us? Please go on the table. Please go on stage. I apologize. So who do we have here? Hi, Bharat. Yes, please introduce yourself.
Hey, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bharat Raghunathan. I'm a senior program manager working alongside Roberto in building the records management solutions in M365. So happy to be here and glad to listen to leaders and SMEs in the space and take back on what we can build more in our product.
Thank you so much, Bharat. Second, Gupta. Second, are you with us? Okay, or Stephanie? So, okay, so we have, and thank you so much, Microsoft. Thank you for being here. So one of the things that I'm going to do now, let us move on so everybody knows who we've got, and we've got the right people over here. So what I'm doing right now is I am handing this over to the three people who has helped me so much put this together, and the community as well. Andrew, I'm handing it over to you, Rob and Vivek.
Thank you very much, Maria. I would just like to say a very, very big thank you to Microsoft for all the work that they've done on the record keeping functionality in Microsoft 365. I wouldn't be sitting here if it weren't for that functionality. It has always interested me right since SharePoint 2010 was introduced, and you're doing nothing but improving it, and it's really, really amazing. The sense that I get is that Microsoft may need a bit of direction from the record-keeping community and the archival community on some of the points that they could improve on to make the product even better. And so I'm going to speak to 3 of those points on the list that you can see here. The first of them is the metadata. So when you destroy records from the Microsoft 365 environment as part of retention policies, the view is that it would be better if you could keep more metadata. So the metadata that's coming from the document libraries, for example, there's a lot of rich metadata in those document libraries, but the metadata that's kept through the disposition process is quite minimal. My view is also that it would be great if you could keep the metadata of every record that is destroyed as part of a retention policy. Now, I appreciate that that's a lot of data, but it should at least be an option to say, do you want to keep all the metadata of all the records you've destroyed, not just the ones that were subject to disposition review? So that's what I mean by the essential metadata to be retained, much more metadata than you're retaining at the moment, because to me, there's not enough to prove disposition, to prove when it was authorized, who authorized it, what metadata is associated with those records. So if you could extend the metadata, that would be really great. So that's the first one from me. The second one for me.
Do you mind if I jump on that one, Andrew? To ask clarifying questions and all of that. By the way, thank you for the feedback. Yes, we always need input from the community, so do keep it coming. A couple just really quick on what you were mentioning. So one of the things that I know it's really hard to keep up with all of our news. I used to be on like I said, up until recently on the consultant side, so I get, and it was my job to keep up with all the news. So I will just mention, we actually so it is easy to miss some of this. As a recommendation, most of the time we will ship something, we will have it on a message center post. I don't think a lot of people here are admins of their tenants, so they might not get those. So always keep an eye for our tech community blog. There's a compliance tech community blog for that. And I just mentioned that because what you the first point that you were making around disposition of metadata, we actually rolled out recently this year the ability that for all records, even those that don't go through disposition review, anything that was marked as a record in Microsoft 365, we will be storing that proof of disposition metadata, and we will be storing that for longer term. We'll be storing that for 7 years. So anything that has been automatically disposed or disposed through disposition review that was a record will be actually getting stored as a start. Go ahead, please.
So Roberto, can I just counter that by saying that the concept of declaring something a record is quite specifically American. It doesn't apply in Australia. We don't declare things as records here. It's not part of our process. So as a result, this idea you've got only records, I understand what you're saying. Yes, they're recorded, but I'm talking about anything that's subject of a retention policy, not just those things that you talk about as being declared as a record. It's not relevant in our environment.
Yeah. Okay. Very, very, very fair feedback around the difference there between different regulations. So great. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback around that. Yes, and at this point, it is around things that have been declared as a record label. Now you don't necessarily have to use it from the kind of manual declaration process, but that is actually part of the functionality we've shipped. Great to hear more about that. Around the metadata and what metadata is actually kept after disposition. This is something that I think the input from that community is great, and would love, whether it's through the chat or through the questions, to hear from all the different people that are joined here today. Because one of the key things that we've heard from customers is what is the right amount of metadata that we can keep for something that has been disposed that would not present a legal finding or something of importance in the case of legal matters and e-discovery. And so how much is enough metadata to be able to prove destruction without causing any kind of liability at the time of e-discovery of something that should have already been deleted. So we definitely wanna improve on that disposed items to be able to really have that proof of destruction that you're looking for. But I love the feedback from the community around what metadata you would want and what would be too much.
Yeah,
I think there are 2 points there, Roberto. I think first is that minimum set of metadata, and also the retention period. I have seen so for example, now the destruction certificate or the destruction record that you keep is for 7 years, which is fine for certain countries. But for example, some of the customers who work in multiple countries and their local regulations mean that sometimes that 7 year is not enough. So might be worth actually thinking about, is there an option to make it configurable so that different regulations can adjust how long you should keep a destruction certificate for a record?
Yeah. And on the conversation thread, Nikki Welch from the National Archives in the UK has, definitely said the same, Nikki, that in the UK, the stand is everything that they produce is a record. And this is proving to be a challenge right now. So Roberto, we're very happy with what you have done. So it's the expansion of it, not really the improvement, because as you mentioned, it already works. It's just expanding it into the other workloads and the other non-record within that scheme of the 365. Andrew?
Yeah, so the next one that I was going to speak to kind of touches on the same subject in some ways. With one of the issues that archival institutions may have is ingesting the content from Microsoft 365 in the future. And the example that's constantly thrown up is a few years from now, all the stuff about COVID, how are we going to get all of that content across to the archival institutions for long-term permanent retention? How is that content going to be exported out, including with all the original metadata that was associated with it? So that's really required for archival institutions to be able to have that information. I don't know if anyone would like to make a point on that, but
so I think it's about exporting, but also it's about transfer. So may not necessarily, Roberto, be about actually physically a method of exporting, but transferring those records. And there are a lot of organizations and probably National Archives specifically, where there are public departments who have to submit their documents or records to National Archives. And so in that instance, how do you maintain the integrity of the record and actually transfer it from one place to the other, whether it is by the method of exporting it or transferring it using an API or something? But that is quite a challenge, and a lot of it will be for a very long period. We're talking about 10 plus years, 20 plus years, and some of those records are actually permanent.
Yeah, absolutely. This is it's definitely a scenario we've been talking about a lot, and definitely I think this is awesome that you put together this roundtable, because I don't think we've had the chance to discuss with this broad set of regulators before in one setting at once and have that discussion. And especially for the regulators, I think it would be really interesting for us to understand what would be the criteria, to your point, Vivek, what would be the method we can provide to be able to provide that transfer and guarantee that integrity? Because of course you can do that. If your files are stored in SharePoint today, by copying the file, right, copying the metadata over, you could automate this yourself. So of course that's not ideal, right? You ideally would want to have some kind of built-in method or some automated method that we would actually be able to bring in there. And we're definitely working on starting down that path with some of the enhancements we have coming down the road. But I would be interested, especially from the regulators, on if there are, as I know, for example, NARA, you're working on kind of revising some of the guidance, and some of the other regulators on specific details or criteria you're looking at on that transfer that goes maybe beyond just the simple copy of the content and copy of the metadata. Because of course we have to, I would assume that these long-term storage locations that we're going for NARA are more generic repositories. So we have to assume the metadata will have to be exported in some kind of like related file, but not as part of the file like we can do that in SharePoint. And so I'd be curious on around those details.
Kevin, is Kevin from NARA, or Pete, or Nikki Balin, or Martha? Would be good to have a feedback from one of our national archives.
Or should I move on to the next point?
Here we go.
I'm much happy to pass on to one of my colleagues from either the TNA or NARA, because my department doesn't take in electronic records. So.
Okay. Kevin?
Yes. So from the National Archives point of view, we're always trying to identify what is that core set of metadata that's important to the record, including the disposition information. But beyond that, anything that a user may do with a record may be of interest to the archives. And so we've heard anecdotally things like in Outlook flagging an email, but then the inability to export that flag along with the email message. And similar, kind of situations in different platforms. And so we're looking at, the long view of, we don't know what happens to records throughout their lifetime at an agency. Some of them have a 100-year disposition. So the creating and managing applications are just kind of, in a sense, borrowing those records for a while, and then they're going to go to an e-archive or some other solution, and then they're going to come to the National Archives and be stored for posterity in our systems. And so trying to genericize things down so that we make sure that we have the content, context, and structure necessary for researchers in the future to understand those records and make use of them. It's a very, as everybody on this call knows, it's not a straightforward task to try and peer into the future and say, if an agency is using SharePoint and they're going to pull things out and park it in an e-archive, and then they're going to come to us, what's getting lost along the way? And so trying to understand those systems and what they're capable of is what we're working on. I'm not sure if that got at the question you posed. But.
Roberto, this is like before we move on to Nikki. Okay, well, Nikki, but
yeah,
please join us.
I think so obviously there's a huge variation that we could take in. I think from our recent experience of transferring digital records, there are a couple of things which are really useful for us. So one is a checksum. So we use the SHA-256 algorithm, and that's our main way in which we prove integrity of our records from where they come from, and that we've got exactly the same thing, and then we recalculate that checksum over time. So that's our main way of proving integrity, that we haven't changed anything, nothing's become corrupted. We're also very interested in accurate dates, so a date range for a record. And dates also have a really important part to play in compliance, because a lot of the Public Records Act require depositors to deposit records at a certain age. So under the PRA in the UK, it's 20 years old. So that's when the compliance thing comes into play, right? So if you need to know when you're falling out of compliance or when you're coming up to compliance, so that really helps when we're talking about putting retention and review and transfer. So I'd say, yeah, dates and checksums are two very specific things that we would be looking for to transfer records out of Microsoft at the moment. In terms of the method of transfer, I think we're really agnostic. We would like it to be as simple as possible. So if exporting things and transforming them is really complicated, we would be happy to work with APIs or ownership transfer, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you for the feedback. Oh, sorry, one quick clarification I wanted there, Vivek, if you don't mind. When you were talking about the dates, were you referring to kind of all the metadata around created, modified, any kind of metadata dates that would be associated with it, deleted?
Yeah, so this is it's quite complicated, but I think the problem that we come up across at the moment is that because of the last modified date, so every time someone goes into something to just have a look at it or just opens it to see it, if the date changes and actually that record has, really, it was created like 5 years ago and no one's really doing anything on that project right now, so that puts its compliance date 15 years in the future, but that someone just goes in and has a look, or usually it could be a records person that goes in and maybe moves it around or something, that's going to really throw out all the compliance. So I think what might come up later is this idea of looking at records in aggregate. So that's something that makes managing records a lot more easier. So instead of dealing with individual files and objects, you're looking at records in aggregate, and then you can apply like a compliance date to it. You can review a lot of stuff at once. You can dispose of a lot of stuff at once. So I think dates and aggregation kind of go together in a sense.
So Roberto, I will also add to it the policy information. So if the record or the information is subject to a policy before it's transferred, then it should also carry forward what policy was applied and when was the policy. So when we talk about dates, it would also be really good to understand when was the policy applied, right? And if there are any changes to that policy. So overall, the file information as such and the dates associated with the files, and also the policy information which is attached to that file.
Okay. Thank you, Vivek, as well. And Andrew, we'll move on. And Andrew, Rob?
I think while I'm waiting for Andrew to join us on stage, I've got another one I wouldn't mind adding to that list, and that's that at the end of retention, it would be really useful if we could have some other options. For example, triggering a process or triggering, having an option to trigger a webhook or something, so that we could actually invoke other activities, for example, exporting, just as a thought off the top of the head.
All I can say on that is stay tuned.
That's very good to hear.
So the next one I was going to mention, and the last one I'll mention, is the audit logs. These are dear to records managers. You'll find them talking about process metadata and all sorts of metadata about the activity associated with those particular records over time. The unified audit logs are wonderful. They're really great. Unfortunately, they don't go back very far. For an E3, they're only 3 months. Now, when you're talking about the life of a document, the only audit information you've got really is the modified details and perhaps the viewed by details. Apart from that, there's nothing else after 3 months for an E3 license. So it would be useful, my view, either to re-implement the audit logs that used to be available on SharePoint sites individually, so you can enable it per SharePoint site if you needed to do it, or do something with the unified audit logs that make them more accessible and more available to records managers, because if those documents are going to be transferred to the archives, you will want to have that process metadata with the document when it goes to the archives, which you won't have if it's separated from it in the unified audit logs.
Yeah, I mean, even for the E5, it's only 365 days, which is, nowhere near. And what we end up doing and what organizations end up doing is actually, build customizations around it to extract the audit logs, pump them into another system. And then you kind of just lose the whole context, because, all the richness of Office 365 management APIs and all those other capabilities, you lose that because once it's outside the system, you can't leverage those APIs. So I think, and I think there's a balance there. Probably not all information. There's audit information that can be saved forever, but maybe a balance between, how long should you want to keep record information or information which has retention policies or retention labels applied to them.
Yeah. And Canada is very grateful. Jen Wood is very grateful that this has been raised, because this is a bit of a concern for the Canadian archives as well.
Yeah.
As
Yeah,
well
no,
as everybody.
yeah, great feedback, and it's true. You know, the audit is a tricky one. You would not believe the amount of audit events that are generated in one tenant. So I know 90 days seems like very little, but if you knew the amount of storage that takes, you would be surprised. Because you're right, there's a lot. You know, for some documents there might not be as much information around them, but there is a lot of events happening in the unified audit logs. You know, I'd say so. On the length of storage, again, all I can say, stay tuned. Everybody knows Ignite's coming up, right? So you'll see me say that. Stay tuned just a little bit, because we have a lot of things that we might be talking about either in a couple of weeks, or we'll be talking in the future in future things that we're working on. But the length of storage, for sure, there's, you know, it's definitely been something that we've heard, and it is trickier to figure out it than you would imagine. But stay tuned. There may be good news coming around that. And then around the, you know, I think for the really long storage, and I think this is what Vivek was alluding to. And we know this is not, you know, by no means perfect today. We want to make it better, but it is definitely a path that we're recommending, and we will work to make better. Is that we have, in case you're not familiar with, we did launch Azure Sentinel as a, you know, a product that is great at being able to kind of take all this input and all these logs and collate them and help you analyze them for the future, because it's not just keeping the information, but being able to find it when you need it, as you pointed out, Andrew. And so one of the kind of best practices we've stated is, for example, for those organizations that need to keep the audit logs forever and need to be able to go through all of them, to create that connection between the Office 365 audit log and Azure Sentinel, so that you can actually pump all of those logs there into your Azure subscription, and then you can manage that aspect of storage. How long is it being kept? You're, you know, at that point, you can worry about the consumption of storage and all of that as one option. And we understand that that's not the ideal, that's not perfect, and that's why we're working on improving the kind of built-in aspect. Around the connection, that is an interesting one that you know, kind of maybe ties into the export and transfer, which is whether that connection to the records or to the files and the things that are moving. What I'm hearing the feedback be is it might need to be tighter. It might need to be easier for me to be able to tie one item that I'm exporting into the National Archives to all of the audit logs relating to that. Is that a fair way to interpret kind of what was being shared, Vivek and Andrew?
I think so, yes, and I agree. And I think it's kind of is somewhere. I think it's kind of a discussion on both sides, where the transfer mechanism and transfer requirements needs to now kind of also, you know, change itself also to the digital era. I think some of the transfer requests and methods are probably from the paper era, but I think how does it look like in the digital era, and what does it actually mean, you know, rather than physically extracting information from more API based integration is probably where, you know, I definitely see as the future for, you know, that whole transfer and movement of information. You know, actually, and transfer of information is not just within, you know, from one organization to another organization, but also within an organization where you have a tenant and there is a lot of movement that is going to happen within that organization. So that connection, you know, is quite important.
So we've been jumping up and down this list of bullet points, but I'm going to jump us back up to the top again.
Yes, yes, I noticed the thread.
The sequence is all over the place, but I'm going to jump us back up to the top to the disposition management across multiple tenancies bullet points, because for me, this is something that I'm seeing across various different clients I'm working with in different sectors. I've seen this in universities. I've seen this in large private enterprises. And effectively, the scenario is you have lots of different, almost self-functioning organizations with their own CEOs, and they're all working under the umbrella of a single tenancy. Now, this to me is something that ripples across the whole of Microsoft 365 when it comes to a governance story. But specifically when we're talking about compliance and retention, really I'd like to see some form of movement in terms of the ability to really undertake disposition reviews for different parts of a tenant. Now, I don't really know what I'm saying, but effectively, content that's stored in a certain group of sites or a certain group of teams or a certain, parts of Sway, let's say, we want to be able to undertake disposition review for those group of content, but the people who are undertaking that review shouldn't be able to see other bits of the content that are floating around inside the same tenancy. And I was wondering if there's any opportunities coming up at any point in the future to sort of subdivide tenants.
Yeah. Graham Snow, would you like to jump in as well to support this thread? Graham? No, you could get on. You could get on.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Come back, Roberto.
We have 5 on screen, so I couldn't get on. I've just been chatting in the chat to say that some of the things we've talked about so far are definitely important, but are not, in my experience of talking to lots of other organisations, the sort of key challenges. I haven't come across the one that Rob's just been talking about with multiple tenancies, so I'm going to stay quiet for a minute. But there are some things coming up in a minute that definitely I feel that a lot of organisations that I'm talking to are feeling that they're a much bigger challenge. I think that's the interesting part of this, is that we do have lots of different challenges depending on the kinds of organisations that we are.
But the aggregations is the key point.
Oh, aggregation, right? Okay, so yeah, I mean, aggregation is a major challenge for organisations. I mean, I spotted somebody was talking about it a minute ago in Italy. There's a particular requirement to manage things as collections of records, but I think that's a challenge for all of us in the sense that what we typically find is that the records management within Office 365 is managed at the file level. So I'm talking in particular about labels and retention policies, so modern records management. And the risk there, unless we're using things like event triggers, is that it's going to lead to us having incomplete sets of records. So if you can imagine, for example, we were driving something on a create or modify date, then our records are going to be deleted over a period of time. So we may have an IT project that's run for a year or two. The create and modified dates against those documents are going to be different. As soon as our triggers kick in, it's going to start deleting documents from the first year of the project and then later deleting documents from the second year over a period of time. And that, for many organizations, is a major challenge. Particularly my background working with things like social care files, we've got to conceivably think of it as being a set of documents that forms a record when it's aggregated together. So it's the context of all of the information together that's important, not the individual document. So what we ideally want to do is get rid of that thing altogether, get rid of it all at once, or rather the opposite, hold it all together and not get rid of any of it until we want to get rid of the whole thing. There are some workarounds for that. Obviously, we've done some things around event triggers. There's some things we've been trying, but it does cause organizations a challenge.
Thank you, Graham.
Okay, thank you. I think there was a lot of kind of 2 or 3 things in there. So I'm going to try to address a couple of those, and there's a couple I'd love more info around the challenges, because I've not been able to listen in and keep up with the chat. That's rolling a lot. Tons of engagement, love it. I'll have to go read through it later. The team will let me know. First, just to address really quick the point that Robert made around the splitting the tenant. What do you do if you're one big organization under the one huge tenant? and compliance, we all know, typically won't work as one. It's not a unique situation, by the way, and it is something we even see with private sector customers. You have huge organizations that really have different agencies and work internally. So it's definitely a problem we see. And we've introduced some ways of dealing with it. So it is not super widely promoted, but there is a feature. It's kind of buried under eDiscovery, but it essentially filters a lot of the compliance features where you can have certain users only be able to essentially be able to see certain parts of the tenant. So you can establish certain, I think the name that under it might be documented is compliance boundaries, and it basically it kind of works as a, as you understand, our compliance essentially really relies on search to understand where things are at and everything. And so this works kind of as a search filter to say, hey, Roberto can only see like this part of the tenant versus, then Andrew can see this part of the tenant. The compliance boundary really helps in that, and being able to do that, and help on that. It's not, super easy to set up. You have to do it in PowerShell and things like that, but it is kind of a start of some organizations. On the disposition aspect specifically, it is definitely top of mind. And again, all I can say, stay tuned for maybe a little bit longer, but stay tuned. Where we do understand that organizations want to be able to define, kind of more segmented disposition reviews, and so for that we it's definitely a use case that we're thinking on. We're working on improving that, and we really hope that what we are working on will meet those things that you're looking for.
So just to add to that, Roberto, compliance boundary is actually quite a good one. We use it quite effectively, especially in litigation scenarios where when the litigation team wants the business to come in and perform preservation searches, but they don't want them to access everything. So they actually, and it is a PowerShell trick, but they actually run the PowerShell on certain areas where they actually want to just create an invisible boundary for them. So from their point of view, all they search, and the search results only return from the locations which are actually attributed to them. So it says, so that's definitely, a way where some of those challenges are being addressed. I think somebody also posted about eDiscovery and SharePoint's ability to identify or differentiate records. So, there's also that feature now that you can actually filter your information by compliance tag. So if there's a compliance tag applied to information, you can actually say, bring me information which has this compliance tag applied to it, and we just filter and bring that information back to you. So I just wanted to share that. I thought it was quite interesting that somebody asked that question.
Yeah, great point. By the way, just until recently, we finally renamed that to say retention label rather than compliance tag. It drive me nuts. It used to drive me nuts. I know it's a little wins, but so now you can actually filter easily in the content search, say retention label. Great point, Vivek.
Okay, that's really good, and that's available for E3. So we have an audience who are really scared to say yes, it's available, but it's on E5. Okay, so
good question. I am not 100% sure on the eDiscovery answer there, and licensing is always a tricky one, but yeah, that is there. At least double check and confirm. We have, so by the way, speaking of around licensing, I'm not sure for the this helps everybody. I think for U.S. government might be a little bit different. We have a little bit of a different situation with the government licensing and tenants, but for all of those of you that use the enterprise, especially, I know, I used to be a consultant, totally get it. Our licensing is hard. It seems like we're trying to make it hard on purpose, but there's it's a lot harder to figure out the kind of appropriate way to price things and where it should be. And so we know it's hard, and what we've been working is to really make it much easier for you to understand. So one link that I'm sure one of my colleagues will help me put on the chat If not, I'll spell it, which is aka.ms/compliance-sd for S as in Sierra, D as in Delta. That is a link that takes you to where we explain all of the different areas of compliance, who should be covered within the tenant for license, etc. And we have a very useful but very big spreadsheet that you can see as a PDF or an Excel file that has all the different features and which licensing it's part of or not. And so for licensing questions, that's usually my go-to because it is hard to keep up. The aggregation topic, if I can dive into that one is really interesting. I think it is definitely something that today, you're right, when we look at retention, we're looking at an item level, right? All of our protections and all of the policies based on the item level policies. We do have the document sets, as you're familiar with, probably from SharePoint, but that is really not driving as much the logic. So it is an interesting topic. I think it's great for us. We've talked about it a little bit, but it's good for us to reiterate that should be in our backlog, and we should start to think about how do we figure that out, and how we let people be able to kind of handle a set of records or a set of items, a set of documents as one big record. So thank you for that feedback around the aggregation itself. I am curious, you made a mention around events and event-based, and I thought I saw something around events on the chat. I'd be curious more on that feedback on event-based, if there is some particular challenges that you're experiencing or something, or if people are not familiar with how our event-based retention that we have in the product today works for triggering the retention.
Okay.
Following that conversation a little bit in the chat, there was some points being raised about being able to do I think what I understood reading was that being able to do the event-based retention based either on a number of pieces of metadata or on an unknown, a set of unknown dates at the time. I'm not sure. I'd have to kind of, I think it was Andrea who was talking about it. We probably need to explore that a bit more to understand what the specific requirement is. But that was the one I caught. I don't know if anyone saw anything else being discussed.
Andrew, maybe.
There were a couple of other points that we wanted to discuss that we haven't got onto yet.
Yes.
Mostly around retention labels, actually. So if you don't mind me steering the conversation that way, I'd be quite glad to pick up a couple of points.
Yes, please.
Firstly, I guess there's permissions around retention labels. So in previous conversations, there's been sort of a bit of will to have a separation of the permissions for applying and editing retention labels from those of actually editing the content that they're relating to. So wouldn't it be great to be able to allow a user to edit a file, but not allow them to change the retention label that's applied to that file, for example? And the second point, before I hand over to you, Roberto, effectively is that I just would love to be able to make a retention label mandatory, like you can with a SharePoint column. I'd love to force people to have to apply one and remove the little none from the drop-down list. Is there any chance of getting something like that?
Great feedback. Let's see. So permissions for users to be able to to edit the file but not the label. It's good feedback, and I think this is probably something that if we ever were to implement, it would be more tenant based as a setting that you can choose, because we know that some of our customers might have different views on it. I've heard different flavors of it, of hey, if I if I have an auto-applying policy, for example, based on metadata or based on a trainable classifier, machine learning one, I want that to override whatever the user says. Whereas we have customers that said, well, no, the user knows best, right? They're the experts, and they still would be able to override. And so a little bit of just kind of the frame of mind we've been kind of applying this from is that we all know that manual labeling doesn't scale, right? It's really hard. We have to encourage our end users, information workers, to do that, and it's really tough for them on top of their job, and so that's why we've been investing a lot on the auto classification. However, because we know it's tough to figure out and have the auto classification be perfect or catch every single one of the right instances, our point of view so far has been the information worker really still has, it's the expert on the content, still has kind of like that best knowledge, most close knowledge of the file, and should be able to override, what this is. Of course, that presents a challenge in compliance at times, because what if I go retention shopping and I say, well, I don't like that this is going to expire in 3 years, so I'm going to choose this other label just so that it expires in 10. And so I think that is great feedback. Nothing that I can actually share that we would be actively working on removing, except for, if you stay tuned for a couple of more weeks, we do have something coming that might be related to that, but not really aimed for that that experience that you're talking about. Or I can still edit the file. The file's still not a record, just something applied with a retention label, but it is essentially only able to be edited maybe by the site collection administrator or compliance administrator to be able to change that label. And I think that would be the other part that I'd be curious, Robert, is if the end user can't change it, like a person that added, who can? Is it an admin? Like for now, we've always given the administrator or owner of the location, so call that myself in my OneDrive, or the site collection admin on a SharePoint site collection. We've always given that person kind of the admin rights to overwrite some of the functions. Is that who you would see being the one that has the permissions to edit label, or even higher, only like a compliance admin at a larger level?
Oh, personally, I'd like to see it configurable. So I'd like to be able to adapt who it is in different spaces. Now, I recognize that's going to be a challenge in different parts of the tenancy and easier in SharePoint, I'd imagine. But still, I would like to see the flexibility to determine who it is. But with regard to the being able to actually mandate, make the retention labels, actually required, like a SharePoint column would be, is there anything that you could share with us in that space, Roberto?
Mandatory, not yet, unfortunately, not yet, but definitely a good one for our backlog, and that we are aware of. We also have heard it for both our retention labels, as we've heard it for the information protection side, right? For being able to classify something confidential, highly confidential, and applying the right protections to it as well. So definitely something that we've heard. Nothing that we can announce around that, but it's good to know that that is an interest of essentially making that mandatory labeling. I think that one of that we've seen really good success with, and again, it's been part of trying to make sure. Part of why we've not shipped something like mandatory labeling is we all know that compliance, unfortunately, is not the first thing on information workers' minds, right? They're trying to do their job, and so we're trying to make sure that we don't get in the way of productivity, and we don't get in the way of collaboration. And I think that is a lot of our point of view that you'll see us at times challenge. The kind of preconceived or traditional, what a traditional IRMS might do, because we are trying to make sure that we still are within Microsoft 365, promoting that really easy collaboration, productivity, and for example, to use an example kind of related to that, we used to have that ability to say, you have to force somebody to check in and out things. And what we found out, I think, as I was a SharePoint consultant for years, is that only prevented people from being able to collaborate. They would post stuff and no, you can't see my version. I forgot to check it in. And so I think that's part of what we're trying to find, is what are the things that give us enough control and enough enforcement without really hindering the collaboration, because then the next usually those kind of restrictions, when it creates that I can't upload my file, the next thing that it causes is for somebody to say, oh, 365 doesn't work, it's a terrible platform, or I just have to go upload this file, send it through an email because I couldn't share it in the proper way. And so I think that's a little bit of what you'll see us kind of do.
So Roberto, just very quickly, I think I support that, because I think on that mandatory label, you probably will have to, if you do consider it, you probably have to think about something at the tenant level, like configurable, because you'll always find that people will be, and organizations will be split. Some want it, some don't want it, and the same situation with checkout problem. When it was eventually addressed in modern UI, we found that for some of our customers, there's like thousands of files which were never checked in, and now all of those items need to be checked in through a separate process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, guys, very conscious of time, because I don't want this to hang. I want to make sure that we've got our next steps. I don't want this to go, oh, what happened there, after those really, really amazing conversations we're having right now with the right people around us, with the regulators, with Microsoft and everyone. Roberto, now these are things that we have managed to collate, and we provided this for you, and this is something that we want to continue the conversation with, and we don't want it to be just a round table. This is something that's a working discussion, if you like. Ren, thank you for joining me. So the reason for this is our round table in IRMS is really meant to flush out the real issues that the records managers are having, and close it, because we're going to do a more proactive addressing of this specific issues. So obviously this list that we have, Roberto, is something that we will follow up with you actively.
Yeah. And if I can take 30 seconds to cover a couple of closing things around that, I think this is awesome. Great feedback, love it, and we should definitely find a way. I'm happy and have a couple of ideas we can talk about offline around how we can keep the conversation going and make sure that this is not just a one-time thing. A couple of things that I did want to highlight for the group, and I think I did so. I think Matthew shared that on the chat, but we do have a user voice category for information governance and records management. I think Matthew pasted the link earlier. Maybe we'll put it again. But this is a great way for you to make your voice heard and join the voices of a lot of other customers around things you'd like to see, where you can post an idea and other people can upvote it. I know that in the past we might have not been doing a great job of maintaining it. I can guarantee you today, our team looks at that on a regular cadence, and we are looking for what are the top ideas, what are the most voted, what are the ones that are right now getting the most activity, like most people are starting to vote, even if it doesn't have as many votes. And so we're really looking for your feedback, and we really appreciate your passion and your feedback for being able to do that. I saw there was a lot of conversation around licensing, and for that I would just make sure, talk to your account manager. There's lots of options, there's lots of things we do around that, so please do that.
Yeah, and of course the second goal that we want to continue moving forward, Roberto, is because I know the user voice format, but as you see, we kind of gathered together as a community, where it's very specific to the practice that we're on, and we're just happy that our regulators and the National Archives have joined us as well, because these are the guidance that we want. So how we would like to progress is, we have gathered around a view on design partnership. And this would be an active partnership between our community, not just the practitioners, but also the National Archives. I know that individually you are having those conversations. However, what we are finding out now is these issues are across the board. Countries, governments, what have you. And this is the reason why we have this opportunity to answer that from a more global and put together perspective, not for the entire 365, but for this very, very specific functionality and offering of 365. And this is what we have been requesting, if this is something that is possible, that we can move forward with. And then this could be a user voice input in terms of as a group rather than individual. Roberto, is that something that we could enable, and then we could follow up with you guys?
Yeah, please, let's follow up offline. This is fantastic, and we would love to continue the conversation, especially because you have all the experts here, along with the experts on regulation and the ones shaping our our national archives. So absolutely, we have the right people on this call. That coincidentally are not me, because sometimes I can get bogged down on actually shipping the product and not answer on some of the questions. But Tina from our marketing team, as well as Matthew Littleton from our what we call our global black belt teams, which are a team of specialists, are the right people, and let's definitely to help us coordinate that and make sure that we can continue the conversation and continue the partnership. We would love that.
Matthew, is this something that we can continue the conversation with, and we'll follow up offline as well with Roberto and your team within the compliance team at Microsoft? Matthew?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we can definitely take it offline. We'll also provide back to you sort of a consolidated set of links and all that we had pasted in the chat window. But yeah, welcome the feedback and the forum on all of this. It's really important for us. And as Roberto talks about, I mean, these things are actively being looked at. So I'll work with you offline on that.
Okay. Thank you so much. So so hopefully we could formalize and establish and move forward with this design partnership, because we do have our next roundtables, because what we want to do is close this one and move on to working closely with you as a community. And I am so sorry, Roberto, this actually looks familiar, doesn't it? It's still Microsoft. So
love it.
Our next roundtable is approaches to email management, and can M365 do it all for content management? So at some point in October, we will be opening this roundtables for this specific topic. But we are very, very grateful for everybody. It's awesome when we all get together this way. The amount of good that we can do for the community and for everybody is just unimaginable. And Ren, can I?
I just want to say thank you very much indeed, Maria, for managing. Absolutely huge thanks to everyone who joined, to everyone who's contributed. 3 quick things. This is ongoing, obviously, as Maria's discussed. It's a partnership. It will go forward. There'll be further themes that we'll introduce sequentially, as is on the slide at the moment, things around email management. And last but not least, we're going to use all the IRMS communications channels to keep you all posted on this. So stay safe, everyone. Stay well. Have a good day. Have a good evening. Have a good night, wherever you are in the world. And thanks again for joining.
Thank you. And for our You know, for the guys in Australia and New Zealand, thank you so much. Have a lovely snooze. For our guys in North America, for the guys who joined us from North America, have a lovely day. Thank you so much. This is not the end of the conversation. It's just the start. Thank you.